Hello friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going through my favorite books from quarter one of 2020 since we just wrapped up March a couple of weeks ago, or like a week and a half ago. That obviously is the first quarter of the year, and I just thought, why not have a look back at how my reading year is going so far and talk about some of my favorites. So if you've watched a few other, maybe my year-end content, you might have noticed that I really don't love to rank things definitively. Honestly, I'm really bad at that. I'm terrible at deciding like if something is my favorite, because when I love things, I tend to just not be able to decide. Like, I love them for each of their traits, and I find it really hard to place one above the other if I just love them. So rather than doing a ranking, I am just gonna go through my favorites. So I have made a list in the order that I read the books, but they're not in order of a ranking. And the other thing is that I am not putting any rereads on this list. So I read a total of 22 books in the first quarter of the year, but I had 2 rereads, I think. It was 2, so that means that I have 20 books to choose from, and when I looked back at my favorites, I ended up with a list of 7 books. So let's just get right into it and talk about what those favorites were. So the very first one on this list is Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, and it is the second book in a trilogy, so I can't say too much about the plot because of course I'm not going to spoil anything, but people who have read Robin Hobb, I think that it's very widely acknowledged that Royal Assassin is one of people's favorite books by her, and I totally felt that when I was reading it. This is a book that just gives you the entire range of emotions. Robin Hobb is so good at that. Like, she crafts such great characters, and then she really makes you feel for them, and it's not only like sadness or happiness for these characters, like she will make you feel infuriated at the injustices that they endure. And there were times when I was so frustrated reading Royal Assassin that I like just had to put it down for an hour because I was like feeling exactly what the characters were feeling, and it was such an experience. It was so well done and well crafted, and even though I love Farseer as a whole, and I read Assassin's Quest also in the same month, Royal Assassin does stand head and shoulders above the other 2 books for me. I just thought that that was like Robin Hobb at her best. And even now I have started the Live Ship Traders series, and so I haven't gotten too far into it, but I can see that Robin Hobb is like on her form again, just as good, if not better, as she was in Royal Assassin. So I'm so glad that I have gotten to experience Robin Hobb and that I am going to be continuing with her, and that there is so much more to dive into in the realm of the Elderlings. The second book that was a favorite for me this year was Feet of Clay by Terry Pratchett, and this is the 3rd book in the City Watch sub-series of Discworld, with the first 2 being Guards and Men at Arms, and both of those I read last year. And so those first 3 books in the City Watch series, I gave each of them 5 stars. I thought that they were all phenomenal, and there's not too much to be said about Terry Pratchett that I have not already said in other videos, but he, like, in contrast to some of the other heavier, longer fantasy books that I will pick up, he is just a breath of fresh air in the sense that the Discworld books are so easy to read, they're so funny. His prose and turns of phrase and the way that he like crafts wordplay, it brings me genuine joy while I'm reading it. And then there's just the social commentary and the overarching humor of jokes that will span through the book, and like he is good at plotting too. So in my opinion, Terry Pratchett really does have it all when it comes to a more lighthearted fantasy, and Feet of Clay is sort of like a murder mystery in the city of Ankh-Morpork that the City Watch is dealing with and is trying to solve, but it's so much more than that at the same time because his books are never just one thing. And yeah, Feet of Clay was just as amazing as the first 2 and definitely made an impression on me in the first part of this year. Now, next up, we actually have two books that I read in the same weekend, and at the time of finishing these, I don't think I could have told you that they were going to be favorites, because even though I rated both of them highly, one of them didn't even get 5 stars, but it's the way that they've stuck with me throughout the last more than a month since I've read them that really tells me. So the first one of them is the novella Ring Shout by Djèlí Clark, and Ring Shout, I have a reading vlog on this, so if you're looking for in-depth thoughts and my reading experience, I will link that for both Ring Shout and Piranesi. But Ring Shout is about a group of Black women who are monster hunters in the South, and the monsters that they are hunting are actually KKK members. Because in this imagining, the KKK members can turn into actual monsters, and it has something to do with the corruption of their souls. And it is just such an interesting and compelling concept. This does have a lot of body horror in it, so I will say that if that is not for you, then this may not be for you. But Djèlí Clark just did such a great job of packing so much like character work, horror concepts, social commentary concepts into such a short little novella, and I thought it was like perfectly paced. I thought that the emotional connection was there and the emotional payoff was there, and I was just so impressed with this. And this was a 5-star prediction that turned out successfully for me, and it has definitely stayed in my mind since I've read it. So Ring Shout was amazing, another favorite. And then, like I just mentioned briefly, because these were both part of the same vlog, the next book on here is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And this is the one that I did not rate 5 stars at the time. But the thing about this book, and I believe that it was Evie that also said this, is that this book just stays with you. And it has stayed with me since I've read it, and it is just such a fascinating concept. And I've said this in the past too, but Piranesi is a book that I think it is best to go into knowing as little as possible. So I'm not going to tell you a lot, but the most basic concept is that we are dealing with our main character, Piranesi, who is a man that lives in this labyrinth-like massive house, and there is one other human that he knows of that lives in this house, and we follow him through his life. So that is all I will say, because I think that the execution of this book and the idea of it were really, really fascinating and really well done. And it is also a really short book, so I would highly, highly recommend it. Next up, for number 5 and number 6, I'm going to group them together because they are books from the same series. So that is going to be The Girl in the Tower and The Winter of the Witch by Katherine Arden, which are books 2 and 3 in the Winter Night trilogy, and I read The Bear and the Nightingale in December. So if I had read it this year in 2022, I am certain that all 3 of these books would be on my favorites of the first quarter, because I adored this whole series. I just posted a rave review of it where I tried to be objective and laying out why I like the series, not just gushing, but the fact is that I gave all 3 of these books 5 stars, and they're so well done. And the whole idea of this Russian folklore setting, and it's a historical fantasy. It is very atmospheric, and so obviously you're in historical Russia and you're dealing with a lot of the fairy tale-esque vibes and old Russian folklore. And that is the basis of the world building and the magic, and the atmosphere comes from this deep, cold feeling of where these characters live and what they experience, and you can sink yourself into the story so well. They're also short books, and they were so easy to get through, and I'm already looking forward to rereading them. So it is super easy for me to classify The Girl in the Tower and The Winter of the Witch as favorites from the first quarter of 2022. And then finally, the only book on this list that is not at all fantasy is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this was a recent read for me. I read this in the latter half of the month of March, but this made such an impact. I know it's only been a short time since I read it, but I do still think about the book regularly, and I think it's because it feels so real. Like what Taylor Jenkins Reid crafted about Evelyn Hugo and the story of her life, like it feels like the people that I read about exist, and it feels like I could go watch her movies and like I could go pick up a real biography and read about Evelyn Hugo and who she was. And that is like, that's a skill, because I wasn't sure if I was gonna like reading about famous people, but it was really the emotions behind the scenes and the look behind the curtain at who these people really are and the relationships that they have and their raw emotions. It was just like, it was so good, and I was so pleasantly surprised that I loved it so much, because it is a book that has a ton of hype, and it has for a long time. Like, I am late to the party on picking that one up. But if you do like reading about books that are rooted in the relationships between characters, then you will get that in spades, and I would definitely recommend that. So it is, I think, will be an enduring favorite for me, and it's another one that I am completely already looking forward to rereading. So I have read some other great books already this year, but these are the ones that stood out to me when I was looking back and making this list. So please let me know what you think of these, and please like this video if you liked it. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you would like to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I will have information about my joint Discord server in the description if you would like to join that. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!